In the early spring of 1995, a 27-year-old trader named Nick Leeson walked into a quiet room and realized he had secretly lost more than $1 billion. What nobody understood at the time was that his massive catastrophe did not begin with greed, but with a universal glitch inside the human mind. If you have ever held on to a dropping stock, bought something you could not afford, or stayed in a terrible investment, you share that exact same glitch. There is a hidden psychological force operating inside your brain right now that silently influences every single financial decision you will ever make throughout your life. Psychologists have spent decades studying this secret mechanism. Big corporations use it to drain your bank account, and almost nobody ever explains it to you in plain English. I break down one deep psychological concept per video in plain English so you can understand why you make mistakes with money. So hit subscribe and turn on notifications. In 1979, these two researchers published a historic scientific paper on human decision-making that eventually won a Nobel Prize in economics and changed world behavioral science forever. They discovered that the human brain does not treat gaining money and losing money with the exact same emotional weight, creating a massive hidden bias in our daily choices. The pain of losing $100 is psychologically twice as powerful as the joy of winning that exact same $100 in real life. Psychologists officially named this phenomenon loss aversion. And once you understand how it operates, you will start seeing it active everywhere around you, every single day. Because our primitive ancestors survived by avoiding lethal threats rather than chasing extra gains, our biological brain treats financial losses like physical survival danger. When you face a financial loss, your brain panics and naturally pushes you to take extreme, dangerous risks just to get back to your original starting baseline. Stop for a second and think about the last time you bought something impulsively. Did you actually need it? Or were you unconsciously running away from a feeling of missing out? When trader Nick Leeson made a small mistake early in his career, his deep fear of losing his status made him double down on his risky bets. He kept taking bigger and bigger gambles to cover up his initial mistake, ultimately sinking a 233-year-old bank over a simple inability to accept a loss. This brings us to another critical concept discovered by Nobel winner Richard Thaler, which researchers formally refer to as the theory of mental accounting. Classic economic theory assumes that every single dollar in your pocket carries the exact same value, regardless of where it originally came from or where it goes. But human psychology does not work like a cold computer, because your brain separates your money into completely irrational emotional buckets without you even noticing. You will gladly spend a $500 tax refund on an expensive vacation, while simultaneously stressing over a $5 increase on your monthly grocery bill. The money is completely identical in value, but because your brain labeled one as free cash and the other as hard-earned income, you treat them totally differently. Financial institutions and massive retail corporations understand this cognitive vulnerability extremely well and actively construct dark patterns to exploit your mental categories. Casino operators replaced physical cash with plastic chips decades ago because removing real currency dramatically reduces the psychological pain of spending your hard-earned money. Modern mobile shopping applications use digital credit card payments and point reward systems to decouple the pleasure of buying from the painful psychological sensation of paying. Before we examine the most counterintuitive part of this financial psychology, and trust me, this next finding will surprise you, we must look at how you fall into this. When you combine loss aversion with arbitrary mental accounting, you create a dangerous psychological trap that behavioral scientists call the sunk cost fallacy. This happens when you continue pouring time, energy, and money into a failing investment simply because you have already spent resources on it in the past. You keep fixing an old, broken vehicle that constantly breaks down, spent thousands on repair bills because admitting the loss feels too painful for your brain to endure. The money you spent yesterday is completely gone forever, but your primitive mind demands that you keep spending more to prove your original choice was not a mistake. What you just learned about personal spending is entirely true, but here is what researchers found that explains why people remain trapped in miserable jobs for decades. The exact same psychological force that makes you hold on to losing stocks also keeps you trapped in unfulfilling careers because you feel you invested too many years to leave. You stay in a bad situation not because the future looks bright, but because your brain is terrified of wasting the years you already sacrificed in that position. Stay with me, because what I am about to show you in the next 2 minutes is the exact part of this research that changes everything about your life. Psychologists conducted a fascinating experiment where they offered participants a guaranteed reward of $500 or a 50% chance at winning $1,000. Most people instantly chose the guaranteed $500 because their human minds naturally prefer safe certainty when dealing with prospective financial gain. But when researchers reversed the scenario and asked people to choose between a guaranteed $500 loss or a 50% chance of losing $1,000, everything flipped. Almost every single person chose to gamble on the 50% chance of losing $1,000, desperately trying to avoid accepting the smaller guaranteed loss. When facing guaranteed losses, human beings stop acting rational and turn into reckless gamblers, which is precisely why individual financial disasters compound so rapidly. Now the full picture snaps into place, and you can finally see why smart, highly educated professionals make catastrophic decisions with their personal wealth. You make a bad investment or overspend your monthly budget, and instead of accepting the small loss, your primitive brain panics and makes a bigger mistake. You open high-interest credit lines, double down on risky trades, or hide the financial damage, turning a minor setback into a full-scale personal financial catastrophe. The entire system around you is specifically engineered to trigger these ancient cognitive flaws, extracting profits from your subconscious emotional reactions every single day. But here is the empowering part of behavioral science. Once you become consciously aware of these psychological bugs, you can build simple systems to completely defeat them. The first practical step researchers recommend is enforcing a mandatory 24-hour cooling period for every single purchase over $50 that you make online. By forcing a time delay between your initial emotional impulse and the actual financial payment, you allow your rational prefrontal cortex to regain control over your choices. The second strategy is unifying your mental accounts into one single holistic net worth calculation, so you stop treating found cash like play money. Every dollar you own represents your personal time and future freedom, regardless of whether it came from your monthly paycheck, a gift, or a bonus. The third actionable fix is establishing preset stop-loss rules for every major decision in your career, investments, and personal projects before you start. Deciding your exit point in advance completely eliminates emotional panic when things go wrong, allowing you to walk away before small losses become total disasters. When you separate your personal self-worth from your financial choices, you eliminate the destructive fear of failure that drives people into irrational behavior. So let us pull this whole framework together so you can remember it for the rest of your life and protect your hard-earned wealth. First, your brain experiences the emotional pain of losses twice as intensely as equivalent gains, which pushes you into taking reckless risks to avoid small setbacks. Second, your mind naturally creates irrational mental accounts, treating money differently depending on its origin, which big corporations actively exploit to make you overspend. Third, the sunk cost fallacy convinces you to keep throwing good money after bad investments, simply to protect your ego from admitting a past mistake. And finally, building pre-committed rules and automated cooling periods gives your logical mind the power to overwrite thousands of years of biological evolution. When you master your psychological triggers, you stop making decisions based on fear and start building true, permanent financial security and peace of mind. Financial freedom is not about knowing math or predicting markets. It is entirely about understanding the silent, hidden psychology governing your daily decisions. If you want to understand why you do the things you do with money and protect your future self, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Share this video with one person you care about who deserves to understand how their brain actually works around money and spending decisions. One honest conversation about this psychological insight could completely change how they see their choices and themselves for the rest of their entire life.